First up, big ups and massive respect to Hardy and to people who are looking for him. So if we look at lost person behaviour, we can break that into three different levels. We can break that into the behaviour of the person when they're lost and as they're getting lost and as they're seeking rescue. We can break into the likely locations that we're going to find people, and then we can break it into timeframes for survival. So if we add all those together, I'm not at all surprised that Hardy was found alive. I'm sure he had a harrowing time, but he was well inside his time frame for survival, and his behaviour was typical of somebody with his level of experience.
He was found 10 kilometres away from where he went missing. Is that distance unusual?
Yeah, sure. So there's two sides of looking at that. So a lost person is either going to wait to be rescued, or they're going to seek rescue, or they're going to seek to self-rescue. And I suspect what happened is he decided that after day 8 or 9, and he was seeing helicopters and aircraft, and he was realizing that he wasn't being found and rescued, he decided he would seek to self-rescue. So to be found 10 kilometres away is unusual, but it's consistent with his level of experience, whereas a less experienced person would probably be inclined to just stay where they were and be found within a couple of kilometres. I'm not surprised that he travelled 10 kilometres to the hut to find a track to find himself way out.
Yeah, I mean, this is the advice that I think is most commonly given and heard, which is if you're lost, stay where you are. If a helicopter has been over and time has passed, is that still good advice? I mean, is self-rescue something that people should think about after that, stay where you are advice maybe has expired?
I think that's a really good question, and I think it's so situational. So if we look in the case of Hardy, he clearly an experienced outdoorsman, and he'd realised that he wasn't getting noticed by those helicopters. What he should be trying to do is signal those helicopters. He had a campfire. Maybe he could have pushed some smoke out from there. People would have seen the smoke, or he could have sought to signal them by a space blanket or a piece of glass or a broken bottle or something. But once he got to that point where he realised that it was unlikely that he believed in his own head that he'd be rescued, self-rescue became a smart idea, and clearly he had the navigation skills to get out. So I think it really depends on the individual and their ability levels.
Yeah, obviously there are tools designed for these exact situations, like PLBs, personal locator beacons, that people can take hiking with them. But assuming that someone isn't properly prepared to get lost, like Hardy wasn't, what should they do? I know you've just talked about creating smoke potentially. What other kinds of things can people do with really having limited things on them?
So that's a fantastic question. And the reality with PLBs, if you knew that you were going to be getting lost today, you would have a PLB on you. But lost events don't occur when you're expecting them, they occur when you're not expecting them. So I've spoken to a lot of people who've had PLBs sitting in their packs, sitting in their campsites, whatever, and not on them when they got lost. So PLB that you don't have is no use to you. One of the things I suggest to people is have an old CD, which they can just keep in the back of their backpack, and they can use that to catch the light. That's a really good signalling mirror.
That's great advice, and something that people can really easily, I guess, slip into their packs. Obviously, this ended well for Hardy. He was nearly 2 weeks, though, with almost no food. He was able to presumably find water to drink, and he found those 2 muesli bars just in a hut and lived off some berries. Without that food and that sustenance, I mean, would his prospects have been much worse?
I don't think so. I think if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we look at, food, shelter, and water. The reality is, and he would know this because he had a medical background himself, he would know that his body could cope easily with, 2 weeks without food, but he needed water and he needed to be safe from the elements. So I think really what we want to be thinking about when we're getting lost is where is my water source and how am I going to keep myself from overheating or from hypothermia? I think those are the probably key priorities.
And as well as gear, what about the kinds of skills that you would advise people brush up on before they go off hiking or bushwalking, on the off chance that they do sort of wander off the path and get lost?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that question. So I think we should assume that if you spend time in the outdoors, there's going to be a point where you're going to get lost. So expect it to happen. And when you're going exploring areas, spend some time studying the maps, getting some local knowledge and understanding where you're going to be in relation to possible exit points. And I believe that's probably what happened in the Kosciuszko Park. He had an idea on where to travel to. And if you can navigate using the sun, north, south, east, west, cardinal points, that's fantastic. So people always ask me, what are the 10 things you take? And I say knowledge, knowledge, and then knowledge. And then after that, let's start talking about water and things like that. So general bush skills, bushcraft, what's the weather going to be like? What do I need to do to protect myself from the elements? Where am I going to find water? Where am I going to find shelter? And how do I get out of here if I do get lost?